Welcome to Punk Rock Dads. Today we have got singer, guitarist, and author from one of my favorite bands, Face to Face. We're here with Trever Keith. Hi, Trevor. How are you?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me.
That's all good. Chris, take it away. Let's get into some questions.
Nice one. Well, what we like to do is kind of, start off with a few kind of Punk Rock Dads is about the two pillars, being punk rock and being a dad. So, how many kids do you have, and what do they make about your profession? What do they think of you being a professional punk rocker?
I have a couple of children. I have a son and a daughter, and they're both grown because I'm old. My daughter is the younger one. She's 20. My son's 24. When they were young, it was kind of like right in the probably the busiest part of the band, because my son was born in '96. So, we had a playpen that we would put in the back lounge of the bus, and my wife and son would come out on tour with us, maybe for a week, 10 days, something like that tops. But he spent his whole childhood, being on tour, on the bus or whatever. So it's kind of just, I hate to say it, but he's a little desensitized to it. It's probably a little bit of old hat to him. And I think it's something he didn't really appreciate until he got a little bit older, And my daughter's sort of the same way. She was born in 99, and, we were still super active during that time, and so she was around it too. We got tons of photos of the kids wearing like the shooting range ear muffs and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know, I don't think they know any different, so we would think that it would be a big adjustment or whatever, but when you just sort of grow up with that being an element of your life, it's I'm sure it's when they discuss it with their friends or whatever, it's different, but they don't really have anything to compare it to. So, they're just kind of used to it, I guess.
Yeah, it's cool that you could take them away with you on the road. Do any of the other guys in the band have kids, or were you all grouping together like that as a family unit?
I think it was me. Well, Chad, who no longer plays in the band, but at the time when my kids were young, then he started having kids too, and they didn't come around as much. I think he just opted for a different style, a different version of it. Yeah. But I thought of something I wanted to say, going back to the kids and the touring and whatnot. They weren't constantly on tour with me. It wasn't like we kept them out of school or anything like that. And much to my wife's credit, they, I think, had really relatively normal childhoods where they went to school and had friends, and they were involved in outside activities, sports, and different things that they were both very involved in, and now as young adults, my daughter's currently attending university as an undergrad, and my son completed his undergrad and a master's degree, so they're not punk rockers. Neither of them are going to drop everything and grab a guitar and go out on tour tomorrow. But they do appreciate it, like whenever, even now, like when we do shows and they're here in town, both of the kids usually like to come out to the show and hang out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Not embarrassed.
Not embarrassed anymore. I'm sure there was a point where they were.
Yeah, cool. So how do you find balance in life on the road and family time? Maybe going back to that late 90s era where you were going hard.
My wife and I actually got married pretty young. We were both 20 and or maybe just under. So we've been together for a long time, and before the band even formed and before it started gaining any kind of popularity. So that was an adjustment that we had to make in our relationship early on. So we, she has always been incredibly supportive and so cool about the whole band thing. And so you know, for a while when we were really young, at the beginning of our marriage, I really focused on the band and she was really focused on her stuff. And my parents would kind of, you know, they would criticize us a little bit for not like having our lives be completely together. To them, it seemed like we were leading two lives, but we managed it pretty well, you know. And one thing we've always tried to do in our relationship that we found worked pretty early on is we try not to go more than maybe 2-3 weeks tops without seeing each other. And obviously in the early days, that was a lot more difficult to pull off because of finances and whatnot. But I think throughout the years, we've been pretty successful in not letting way too much time go by without us seeing each other, whether that's me coming back at a point or scheduling a tour so that it doesn't go super long, or her coming out and joining on the tour. And then we continued that with the kids as much as we could. But, you know, once they both got in school, then that started to get a lot more difficult because we didn't want to disrupt their lives for my crazy career.
Yeah, that's cool.
You find that happens, don't you? You know, because it's road life is grueling, isn't it? At the best of times, but you try and kind of balance that with a family and, you know, the logistics of flying people across the world or not. And, you know, you only really want 2-3 weeks on the road to be effective, don't you? And then come back, refocus, and you can do something.
Yeah, it's like, you know, personally, extended periods of time on the road for me start to become a little bit problematic. And I would think that might be the case even if I didn't have a family or was in a marriage. You know, it just, after a while, it just kind of gets exhausting. So touring is a blast when it's like pretty, you know, pretty like manageable, and it's kept in like a small burst of time. And now that we're a little bit older, we tend to make our tours a little bit more like that just because it's more enjoyable for us, you know, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks tops or something like that. Now, occasionally, if we get on a tour that's a package tour or a co-headline or an opener, we just take it for whatever it is, you know, and make the best out of it. But when we can control it, you know, we try to keep it in manageable, small bits. And I think that kind of energizes you a little bit, you know, because you go out and you get to do the shows and it's really fun, and you don't do it so long that you burn out, and then you come back home and get that little bit of a rest, and then you go right back out again. So it's to me, like, I like it better breaking it up that way.
Yeah, cool. So 2020 has been a difficult year for everyone. How has the whole COVID situation affected your plans and the band's plans for the year and upcoming time?
Yeah, well, you know, I like to start off this topic by, you know, saying COVID is a really awful thing, and, you know, a lot of people have suffered horribly and many people have died. So because of those things, it feels almost insignificant to talk about whatever you know, I can't even call them hardships, really, more inconveniences than anything that we've had, because our family's been healthy and we've been lucky that no one's had it. Or if we did, we maybe were one of the lucky ones that didn't realize it and had mild symptoms or whatever. So that being said, you know, it's changed everything is the answer. Like, we had touring book planned for all of 2020 pretty much, and everything got postponed. And I think the most difficult thing about it for us and probably for everybody is just really not having any idea of how or when we might start to move back toward whatever we considered normal prior to the pandemic. So the uncertainty is kind of the most difficult part of facing it. But yeah, we had a lot of plans for 2020, and they all just got pushed to the side. Now we've stayed a part of some of the festivals and things that we were planned to be on in 2020, and they've merely shifted to 2021, but it sort of is still up in the air whether or not those will happen when they've been rescheduled, you know. So it's very just touch and go, like it is for everyone else. What we did do is we were planning on recording an album this past year, and we'd started working on an album even prior to COVID. So to the extent that we even wrote songs and were in the recording studio and started tracking drums and bass. And then it looked like it was at a point where we were going to need to quarantine, and our producer engineer, Siegfried Meyer, he's from Canada. So he's like, if I don't go home tomorrow, I don't know if I'm going to be able to travel.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of thing. This is way back in March. Mm-hmm. So we had actually started our album, that was part of the plan for this year too. That was one thing we were able to still pull off because we just changed the way that we made the record. So
yeah,
I got the bass and drum tracks. I brought them here to my house, and then I recorded my guitar tracks here at home.
Yeah.
And then we waited until the restrictions lightened a little bit, and we got back into the recording studio in LA and or Orange County more specifically. And then we did vocals and guitar. Dennis came in and did his guitar parts, and we did overdubs and that kind of thing. And then basically all the tracks went to Sig in Toronto, and he mixed there. And then very much like we're doing now on a Zoom call, once the mixes were made, Sig and I got on Zoom calls and put on our headphones and listened to the mixes over Zoom with the help of another app. And then we just kind of made our tweaks and stuff there, and we managed to get the record finished. So it's done, and that's awesome, and we're really happy with it, but I don't think we're going to release it until next year sometime, or until we know that we can actually be able to go out and do a tour, do touring to support.
Back it up straight away with the tour.
Yeah.
So yeah, unfortunately, we're going to kind of have to sit on it for a little while, but I'd rather do that than, just kind of release it in a vacuum, which, I mean, for an artist like us, we always want to have so much promo and so much going whenever we put a record out. It's hard to raise your hand and in all the noise and craziness in punk rock anyway at any given time. So I kind of like to wait until we can do an album and tour and do proper promotion and everything for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So were you producing it yourself in essence? If you're doing all your guitar tracks in isolation, you kind of self-producing, critiquing?
In a way. I mean, that portion of it, yes. But Scott and I guess will be credited as Scott and I and Sig, who was the engineer and mixer also. I think we all had a hand in production of some sort, whether it was, beating the demos into shape and getting the songs sorted out and fleshed out at that point. And then once we started recording, there's all kinds of judgment calls to make. Do you take that, the vocal take, which vocal take do you choose to make the one for the record, and which guitar parts do you choose, and all that sort of thing. Yeah. So it was a real process. It was unlike any record we'd ever made before. It was a completely new process for us.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But thankfully the technology exists that we were even able to do something like that. And I don't mean to bait or be a tease, but the end result is really fantastic, and we're really, really super thrilled with the record that we were able to make, COVID or no. It's a great record that stands on its own no matter when it was recorded.
All right, we'll bring on 2021, new Face to Face.
Yeah.
I guess that's the good thing about the kind of the collaborative nature now of, what we're doing here. We've got every kind of part of the earth here, haven't we? We've got Australia, England, and America, all having a chat. But you wouldn't have been able to do that effectively, not even probably 5 years ago, really.
No.
So the fact that you can remotely produce an album and you're, super happy with it is testament to some of the good that's going to come out of this, I suppose, isn't it? The collaborative process and people working in ways that they may not have done before, but not through choice.
I mean, I think everyone in some way has had to make some lifestyle adjustments. And, you know, obviously none of us would have chosen this to happen if we could have chosen it not to happen. But if there is any silver lining, I think it might be that it will affect the way that we do some things going forward, because by forcing us to think differently, I think we've found ways to become more efficient too. So, you know, one example is this. And this is a tiny example that's just in my little corner of the world, but as we're getting ready to do a new record, it used to be the case that you'd have to do phoners constantly. So you'd give your phone number out and wait for someone to call you. And it just, compared to what we're able to do here now, that seems very, you know, old timey. I'd much, because I can jump on my iPad or even my smartphone or whatever and do a Zoom from almost anywhere. And you get to actually see the people that you're talking with. You can react to visual cues or whatever. And it's just a much better, I mean, I suppose we've had FaceTime for a while on the phone, but the whole Zoom thing is it's just kind of, light bulbs are going off on interviewers' heads now, and they're going, oh, why don't we just do it this way now? And so hopefully that's going to be the way we do it going forward. You know?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think because technology now has enabled us to do it. You know, the internet is better than it was, and the cameras are better than they were. You know, so it's definitely enabled it. But I mean, you've been keeping quite busy though. Obviously, he's on the record there as well. But you've got your book, haven't you? You know, you got your
so the book is actually one of those great examples of you know, trying to think of new interesting ways to be creative. I had done a book a long time ago when the band was going through a breakup that we'll now just call a hiatus because that's ancient history. I like to rewrite that if I can. And that was a limited edition book. It was only face-to-face lyrics, only from albums that we'd released. And it was only up until the How to Ruin Everything record. So what's different about this book is it's a 30-year collection from 90 to 2020. And it dawned on me this year that it's been 30 years since I've been writing songs that have been recorded and released on albums. And so I thought, wow, what a great, you know, kind of marker to a 30-year anniversary. And maybe I should package everything together and do a book again. But what's better about this book and what's different about it is it's every song that I've written from 90 to 2020. So not only is it face-to-face songs from the albums that people are used to, but it's also face-to-face outtakes. It's face-to-face weird singles and one-offs and you know, limited edition things that maybe people haven't gotten their hands on. It also includes lyrics to songs I wrote in Viva Death when Scott and I were collaborating on that for the first couple of records. And then songs that were never released and from each project, and then songs from my solo record that I put out in the early 2000s. And all of the lyrics from the new album that are about to be released in 2020. All right. So, cool. Because technically I did write them this year, so I thought, they count for 2020.
Yeah.
So I included them in that as well. So it's you know, it's over 150 songs. It's a good substantial book, and aesthetically, I was lucky enough to work with this artist who goes by Ray Tattooed Boy. He's out of San Antonio, Texas. I found him on Instagram and loved his artwork. So I just IM'd him, and he was like, yeah, dude, I'm down. It actually came together surprisingly easy. And he made the book so much more interesting. It gave it so much more dimension. First off, the cover was the first thing that he did. And while it's a little odd for me to like see my own face on the cover of a book, that was a weird thing that made me uncomfortable. Hey, there's the kids now. You know, I was like, it's good artwork, you know, so I was almost able to divorce that self-consciousness because the art was so cool. And so he did the cover, and then he did another 20 illustrations that are also kind of, sporadically placed throughout the book.
Cool.
And it made for something real cool, like it's I wanted to base the book on poetry books I own by like Charles Bukowski or other poets. I'm not like a crazy literary guy, but there's a handful of poets I like. And anyway, the Bukowski books, the way Black Sparrow Press made those, that just the layout and the feel and the look of it was so cool. And I wanted to be able to do that, so I kind of mimicked it. And it's nice because it's something completely different from a vinyl record. And vinyl records are great. Yeah. But this is just a different way of packaging it. And I think the juxtaposition of having all these lyrics in there, they're in alphabetical order instead of chronological order. So you get the juxtaposition of like songs I wrote when I was in my 20s and then songs I wrote this year. Yeah. And you can kind of see the change and growth. And, it just, I think it makes for something that's just another dimension besides having lyrics on a flat sheet of a record.
Yeah, cool. Well, mine's in the mail. Mine's in the mail. I can't wait to get it. So yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. Well, yeah, being in Australia, I guess it could take a while to get there, unfortunately.
That's all right. That's all right. The artist, Tattoo Boy, you say?
Ray Tattoo Boy.
He's a tattoo artist?
I don't believe he is. It's tattooed like he's tattooed.
He's tattooed. Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily come across when you say it, but when you see it in print, you kind of get the idea.
Okay, cool.
He's pretty easy to find on Instagram for anyone who's interested in like checking out his artwork. There's a bunch of great stuff up there.
Awesome.
Nice. And were there any kind of songs there that you'd kind of not forgotten about, but going back over the lyrics you've written over a 30-year period? Did you ever go back and say, well, I'd forgotten I'd written that one, or were they all still kind of quite fresh in your memory?
There were some that I'd completely forgotten about. I'll be honest. Yeah. What I had to do was it's a lot of songs, and many of them, some of them, well, not many, but some were like, we might have recorded it and it got tucked away into some B-side and never saw the light of day again. So I had to go onto my BMI catalog and look at all the songs I've registered and then cross-reference it against different things I could find on the internet so I could make sure I didn't miss anything. You know what I mean? And that was a little bit of a challenge for me. It was kind of cool looking at lyrics that I hadn't really looked at, read for quite a while, and kind of remembering like where I was in my life when I wrote that song, what was going on in my life and the ages of my children when I wrote it, or what was what were we doing at that period in time. So that was a really cool experience to go back, and it was kind of like looking at a photo album in a strange way,
Yeah. Cool. It was a snapshot of time.
So that's going to be released on your own label, is that correct?
What's that?
Your book. And sorry, I've got kids opening garage doors here.
Yes, I can see that.
So you're gonna publish it yourself, are you?
Yeah, it's a self-published book. I have a company called Antagonist. It's a record label and a publishing company. So it's currently available through my company, Antagonist Records, and you can find it at iamtheantagonist.com.
Cool.
Nice. We'll have a look.
What other side projects have you got going at the moment? You mentioned Viva Death before. Is that still going?
Yeah, after Scott and I worked on it in its inception initially for the first record. He and I kind of hatched the idea, and then it kind of grew from there, and we involved a lot of other players and writers and stuff. And then I was also pretty involved in the second album. And then I kind of just wanted to focus on other things. And I told Scott, you know what, dude, you've sort of taken the reins with this, and I think it would be cool to just hand it off to you. So he's been using it as not, I wouldn't call it a solo project necessarily, because he does collaborate with a lot of other people on it, but it's been more of an outlet of Scott's ever since the third album, I would say. And I believe he's released 4 albums to date. Yeah. You could go to vivadeath.com and double check that for me, because I'm not sure off the top of my head. Right. But he's been really prolific with it. So he's really taken the ball and run and done a lot of really cool stuff there. So yeah, check out that website. Another thing we did was we'd made a covers record right around the time we did the Ignorance album called Standards and Practices. And another thing that occurred to me kind of in this weird COVID environment is, you know, we have all these B-sides of covers that are kind of sitting around. They were released at one point, but you know, you'd have to have a CD that was put out in Japan, or you'd have to have this limited edition record or whatever to get your hands on these things. And it occurred to me, none of them are on the internet that are easy to get to, like through Apple Music or Spotify or any of those things. So I got the idea to do a volume 2 of Standards and Practices, and it collects about 7 of those pre-recorded songs, going all the way back to like when Rob Kurth was still in the band. So in the mid 90s, the oldest one is a cover of Whip It we did for a Devo compilation a long time ago. And then and a bunch of other stuff. And then we recorded 2 brand spanking new songs, kind of in this like together from home style, where Danny recorded a drum track, Scott did a bass track, Dennis did guitars. Everyone sent it to me. I put my guitars and vocals on, and then I mixed it. Yeah. So we have a cover of the Plum Souls' Million Miles Away, a cover of Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros' Coma Girl, and then we finished up a cover that we'd done with our buddy Sig, who produced our new record. That's a Naked Ray Gun song called The Grind. So those are 3 unreleased songs that no one's heard, and then a bunch of other stuff that maybe you heard at one point, maybe not, but now they're readily available. You can get it on Spotify, Apple Music, you know, all the whatever the outlets are that are out there. So so that's new, and we did vinyl for that. It sold out pretty quickly, but the digital edition of it is available currently. And we're going to make an announcement next week sometime, but we're getting ready to do a live stream event that'll be basically our Triple Crown that we've done in the past. So cool. It's our first 3 records, 1 each night. Yeah. And we're going to have a bunch of our buddies and, you know, friends from other bands are going to do like little quick acoustic sets and stuff like that. And then we'll be doing a live like Q&A and interview and all that kind of stuff. We're going to be dropping that on Thanksgiving, which is irrelevant to you in Australia and you in the UK. The 3rd weekend of November. Right. I realize that's a intrinsically American holiday. Yeah. But yeah, it's the 3rd week of November. So just keep your eyes peeled for an announcement on that. That's something brand new that we're working on. Yeah, that's awesome, and that's a new thing that's happening, I guess, because of COVID. A few weeks back, the NoFX guys did their White Trash 2 Heaps and the Bean album in full, weekend at Fatty's. Yep. I paid for a ticket for that, and it was fantastic. I felt, you know, I think it was 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning here. Oh my gosh! You know, the earliest NoFX gig I've ever been to, but you know, it was the closest thing to going to a gig. Right. Yeah, I saw it as well, and I thought it was really great. I thought they did a fantastic job. We're actually we're using the same company that they did, the streaming company. So hopefully we'll have good results like they did as well with technical issues and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I was impressed with it. Yeah, and well, since you mentioned the time change, one thing I think it's important to point out is anyone who buys a ticket to this, you'll be able to view any of these shows. We're going to do 1 a night, like I said, for three straight nights. But you'll be able to view each of these sets for up to 72 hours after they air originally. So if you want to sleep in and not get up at 6 to see it, you can watch it whenever you want, and it'll still be available to you. Yeah. The way of the future. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it?
it's a nice touch. You know, you can kind of, you're approaching people on more their terms rather than we're going to be here right now, take it or leave it. You know, it's a bit more that kind of fan, kind of artist and fan relationship that it's a nice payoff, isn't it? You know, it's a nice thing for you to do. Some people will be like, no, if you're in Japan, that's it. It doesn't matter, you know.
Well, we try to be aware of that, you know, and especially with something like a live stream, everyone's on vastly different schedules. So we're scheduling our performances to kind of, you know, please everyone in the States and Canada and maybe Europe, you know, it's going to be a bit late for Europe, but not ridiculous. So we'll be going on in the afternoon here, you know, but the 72-hour thing helps people who are in Japan or Australia that, you know, where the time difference is vast.
Yeah.
And you can watch it twice.
There you go.
Twice.
Many times as you want for 72 hours.
Talk about gear for a few minutes. I've always seen you play really nice guitars. You've had great amps along the way. I've noticed you're playing Kempers now.
Well, I was.
Tell us a bit about. Oh, you was. You were. You've gone back to valve amps.
Well, so you know, I started off with Marshall amps, and I liked the JMPs, and I'd get them modified and do the jumper, you know, from channel 1 to 2 and all that good stuff. But you know, I've kind of played around a lot. I would say the most consistent amp sound I like is the Vox AC30. And so I've used that the most throughout Face to Face's career. I did have a Kemper because I wanted to have something where we could fly into gigs and I could have a consistent sound each night. And the Kemper was solving that problem for me because I got the head version of it. I could just throw it in the overhead bin on a flight and show up with any amplifier or any speaker cabinet. It didn't really matter because I was taking the direct out to the house. So so that worked out pretty cool, but I kind of missed like not having a proper amplifier. So so Dennis, our other guitar player, he hooked up with this company Quilter, and what Quilter is doing is they make amplifiers, but they're really small. And I don't believe they're tube amps, but they are an actual physical amplifier, not a model. And you know what? There might be tubes in them because Dennis is able to just use the amp and get really great sounding distortion right from it. Yeah. What's great about it is we're just he had the idea. He just put it right on his pedal board, and then he's got some overdrive pedals and chorus and delay and some other stuff too. And basically, you just take a speaker cable out from the pedal board back to your speaker cabinet, and then you're done. So you can throw your pedal board in whatever case you want, jump on a plane with that, fly in anywhere, and you're going to have a consistent sound each night.
Yeah.
So I built something that's basically the same. I have a different version of the of the Quilter amp, and I use some different distortion pedals, but you know, it's everyone's personal taste. You know, there's a million different ways to get a distortion sound.
Sure.
But I'm kind of going back toward that. I like the mid-rangey Vox AC30 kind of punchy sound. So it's not real bright, doesn't have a lot of low end. It's mostly mid-range. But that's kind of my vibe. So
I guess Voxes can vary quite a lot in their sound between even the same model of amp. If you were renting backlines in each different city, so that's
right. And that's what led me to the Kemper initially, because I had a Vox AC30 on our backline list for fly-ins, and you'd fly in to do a tour in Australia, and some guy would be like, "Oh, I've got this great classic AC30 from 1960 whatever," and it would have no master volume, and it would, and then I'd go to Brazil and they'd have a Vox AC30, but it'd be a completely different amp, or then Europe and they'd have the Japanese version with the master. So they vary quite a bit, and they're all great. And it was workable. Like if you get the master volume versions, they only sound good when they're cranked all the way up. fucking loud if you've ever used them.
Yeah.
So we came up with the idea, and it was working out really well on a tour in Brazil. I had these master volume or non-master volume AC30s, and we just dimed them out, but we turned the amps backwards so they faced the back of the stage, and it helped cut the volume quite a bit.
Yeah.
So there's little tricks.
Yeah.
But this new setup, I'm like, using
a bit of a hang up there.
Take that feed, but we still run a cabinet. We still run speaker cabinets on stage.
Okay. You just froze for a second there, but I think you said you take the line out for your in-ear monitors, and you do have a cabinet on stage.
I still do use a cabinet on stage, 2 of them. I like to split them across the drums.
Oh,
with Celestion 25 watt greenbacks. That's my speaker of choice. That's like the best speaker to me.
Right. And any signature model coming out?
No, I wish. I'm not famous enough for that. The gear companies never approach me.
All right.
I'll say a couple of gear companies have been really good to us. Kemper Jesus. Well, Kemper did give me a discount, but what I meant to say was Quilter. Peter at Quilter has been awesome, and he helped Dennis and I both out getting these amplifiers. And for any guitar players listening, you should at least go to the Quilter website and check out their line.
Definitely going to check it out.
And SKB Cases has just really, really been awesome with us. They've really helped outfit like all of our stuff recently. So they're great, and their cases, we fly them all over the world.
Yeah, that's as an important, as an amp. You can't rock up and have your guitar neck broken, can you?
In pieces in some garbagey case that's been smashed in half by customs or whatever. Yeah.
All right.
And so, like, kind of moving on from your gear to kind of your lyrics and your content. I mean, you've always kept it fair.
I could nerd out about gear for far too long. So
that's fine, man. That's it. Well, when we finish, I'll leave you two together, and you can have a gear off, and you can just talk. I mean, you've always kind of kept it fairly, classy and on the level with your kind of your lyrics and your content, and it's not crude and the kind of the how you approach the lyrical content of your work. Has that been like a conscious effort, or is it are you deliberately trying to kind of keep it away from the potty mouth side of things and the
It has been a conscious effort, but it's not for any type of like moral or goody standpoint that I've taken. I've always kind of felt that there's a lot of things that are too easy to go to. You know what I mean? Like you can put a bunch of swear words in a song, especially if you're criticizing something authoritarian or whatever, and it's just like, it's so commonplace that it's boring to me. You know what I mean? So I wanted to save that aspect of language for when it really counts. And so if you go through my lyric book, there are moments where there are a few obscenities in there, but I think because I use them so seldom that they make a real statement.
With the correct impact.
Yeah, the impact, that's actually a better word for what I was thinking. Yeah. And, if your songs are just filled with obscenities, there's really no impact to be had.
That's right. It gets diluted, doesn't it? It loses its effectiveness. And then when you do drop one, your ears prick and you go, whoa, okay, you mean it.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So I guess if anything, I've been saving them up for specific moments here and there. I'm not like a prude or anything, but also not really as much when I was a kid. Like when I was writing the songs for Don't Turn Away, I really didn't have any idea what I was doing. I was just trying to mimic the music that I liked and trying to find my own voice lyrically during that time. I'm not like, I don't cringe when I read the lyrics or anything, but over time, this has been a 30-year process. I think it's important to challenge yourself to some degree, right? And it's just not very intellectual to resort to obscenities. There's much better ways for you to communicate and express yourself. So that's kind of been my philosophy with it.
And it can be a lot more effective as well. You know, if you use choice words that aren't just, you know, profanity, it has a far kind of more hard-hitting impact, you know, because you're right. It's very easy, particularly in punk rock, to kind of just shout and swear and be angry. But you can make so much more of an impact, like Richard said, with choosing carefully crafted words, you know, and being more of a poet, like you were saying, and a songsmith, and kind of using language as the weapon rather than just, you know, purely an outlet for your anger, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, agreed. And I will accept that, but it makes me feel a little uncomfortable because I mean, I don't consider myself a poet. I don't really consider any of what we do like high art or anything. It's just rock and roll at the end of the day. And it is just music, punk rock or whatever. But that being said, I have made an effort to try and get better at being a punk rock singer and being a lyricist and a songwriter. So hopefully that shows throughout the years. I can't say with any level of confidence that it's been consistent throughout the 30 years. And anyone who reads the book will probably be critical of moments where my poetry or my lyrics, you know, maybe don't quite measure up. But, you know, it's a process. And I thought it best to put everything out there because maybe this stuff that isn't so great might be inspirational to people like, oh, I could write better than that. And then they go out and try and write it. And again, if we can go back to that word art, which I guess it is, for lack of a better term, even though it's really just punk rock, it's subjective. You know, some people think something is great, other people think it's garbage, and vice versa. You know, all that really matters when you create is that you're able to communicate with people on some level. And if you can have that understanding and communication, if you can make something and put it out into the world and people hear it or see it and they go, I get that. I know what that person was trying to communicate. And I too have the same feelings. Then I think that's the whole point. You know, it's the whole point of being creative.
Yeah, definitely. That's, you know, so you do it because you feel the urge to kind of, you know, you've got that creativity in you. But if just one person says yes, you know, that's the validation that you need, isn't it? You know,
that's enough. Yeah, that's really it. I mean, I think you could have a hit song on the radio, if that even is a thing anymore, and probably sound like a person from another generation saying that. But whatever the measure of success is, you know, people might say, well, my song's been streamed 1 million times and this or that. But if it was something that didn't really matter to people or connect with them, I don't think it's worth doing. You know, you can, and there's a lot of kind of shallow, vapid music, like a lot of other art that's out there too. I don't think money or wealth is any real measurable success that correlates to you know, having any measurable success. It's being able to communicate with people effectively, which I'm actually not doing right now. Stumbling a little bit on my thought, but you get the point.
You get it. I guess it's like artistic merit, I suppose, isn't it? Is what you want. You know, you've done something that's kind of satisfied your artistic kind of desire, if you will. You created what you want to create, and if somebody else enjoys what you've created, then it has purpose, and that's all it needs, isn't it?
Agreed. Yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
How do you see the next decade panning out for punk rock or, you know, guitar-based music in general? Do you think there's is there a new bunch of bands on the horizon that are about to pop out? Are you excited about anything in particular?
I haven't heard anything lately that I've been super excited about, and that's not to say that it doesn't exist, but I just haven't made any discoveries lately. I don't know. It feels like to me, unless the young people, like people in their teens and 20s, unless they start caring about like guitar oriented rock music, it's probably going to maybe continue to get marginalized, you know. I hope it doesn't happen that way. I hope it stays, you know, important, but it's kind of hard to say. I don't know.
Yeah, I get the feeling, and I'm not, you know, dropping shade on anyone's music, but I don't think we'll be talking about some of the bands now in 30 years' time with the same passion, you know.
Right.
It's just kind of throwaway music, maybe to my
I can
ears.
say that, you know, during our recent tours, pre-pandemic and all that, you know, I notice people bringing their kids to shows, which is great, you know, because that's bringing a whole new younger generation in on it. So if there can be fans and enough of a call for people, you know, that are younger, then it'll keep it all going, you know, which is great. But I don't know, you kind of have to judge it also too, like by what your kids listen to, right? So I assume we're all dads here, right?
Yep.
I don't think my kids listen to a lot of punk rock, either of them, unfortunately.
No. It's
my boy's only 2, so my boy's not quite 2 actually. He's 2 in December, so he's not quite at his own.
Oh yeah, you won't know for a while.
Be a little while, but
he's still at an age where you can force feed him the music that you want.
That's it.
For a good while still.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying, is that I don't want to kind of prescribe my music or any particular thing on him. I very much, because I came into punk rock very organically. You know, I'm 37 now, so I was when the '94 kind of, you know, wave of whatever you want to call it, skate punk or whatever, when that hit, I started secondary school, so I was, you know, 13 years old.
Okay.
And, you know, I heard, you know, Smash came out, Dookie came out, I heard Ignition, I just got into Nirvana, and I was just kind of, my head blew. I was like, oh wow, I see. My eyes were opened, and I did it very naturally and very organically. And I'd quite like him to experience something like that, rather than kind of, we talk about it quite a bit in Punk Rock Dad Spring, that you want your children to experience it kind of the way you did, and we got into it, a lot of us, because we kind of rebelled against what we were being pushed on. You know, a lot of our parents were, listen to this from the 60s or 70s or whatever, and we're like, no, we're going to listen to this new exciting stuff.
Yeah. You need to. They need to discover. They need to discover something that's going to blow their mind, whether it's got guitars in it or not. Yeah.
Agreed. Surprisingly, my son likes a lot of the music that I've showed him, which is cool. And we'll ride in the car together, and he'll have his iTunes on or whatever, and you know, Social Distortion will come up, and you know, different punk rock bands. So I'm like, okay, I didn't know that you really like this, but you've left it all in your iTunes. I don't know if that's you just being lazy or what, but he doesn't hate it. So you know, that's kind of a good sign.
Yeah, I'll take that as a win.
Yeah, I'll take that as a win too. Yeah. I try not to force any music on my kids, to our previous discussion, because I remember what I was like, and very similar to what you were saying, like I didn't like my parents' music, you know, but as I got older, I started to realize there were some groups and some records that they liked that I also did like. So so I think, you know, you go through a rebellion period, right, where you're like, that's not my music or whatever, but you get a little bit older and you're like, no, there's cool music from every generation, and you just have to maybe look a little harder to find it.
Yeah. I guess the difference is kind of, we were kind of brought in by the lyrical content, and I don't know what the lyrical content is of, you know, modern music, if you will, whether it's got the same kind of draw, you know, because we've all been angsty teenagers, and, you know, and listening to kind of, you know, Smash and Dookie as examples, I was kind of like, oh, he's singing about me, you know, and I don't know if you know, I'm not particularly up on a lot of, you know, what would class as, you know, very new music. I don't know if that lyrical pull is the same, or whether kind of, you know, society's moved on and it is, and it just doesn't seem like it from my point of view. Does that make sense?
Oh no, I get you. I get you. I agree. And I'm so bad with new music that I can't even cite any examples.
Exactly,
but I know what you're talking
exactly
about.
the same.
Exactly
the same.
I mean, yeah, I'm not closed-minded about new music. I just don't make much of an effort to find it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
No.
I think we all fall into that trap a bit.
Yeah, but when you do find something that really does jump out, then you have to get on it. But I think I find it rarer these days that I find something completely new that kind of piques my ears, and I go, and then you have to kind of delve in. And the good thing about, like you said, having iTunes and streaming services is that you can listen to everything a person has made.
Everything.
At the click of a button. Like if you were to discover Face to Face today, you'd be able to go, that's the B-side that they released on the '95 Japan single.
You can
whereas
get the
before
whole catalog instantly, which is awesome.
Which is good, yeah. But no, it's a hide, I suppose, as well. You've got.
I wonder if it's not a bit overwhelming for young people though to have that access.
Definitely.
To,
yeah.
It might cause a little bit of that, attention deficit where you're like, I like this one song, but I'm not going to listen to all 8 of their albums. That's boring. I'm going to go find another band.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends.
Yeah. I guess also it depends on kind of if you discover someone new. If you discover someone who's got a huge back catalogue, then you can do it. But if we're talking about new bands, they might only have 1 or 2, like we did when we were, we didn't have 30 years of history of a band to listen to. We had two records. I don't know. I suppose we'll find out when we're all 30 years from now, won't we?
I suppose.
We'll see how we get on. I mean, there's one question that we ask everyone who comes onto the Punk Rock Dads channel. So it's your turn now. Who's your 4 people, the Mount Rushmore of punk? You can create it. Who are you putting up there as your 4 kind of pillars of?
Oh boy, I'm not a fan of these kind of questions. What's your Desert Island albums? Who are your favorite lyricists? Who are what?
Let's rephrase it then.
Then I can't remember.
Maybe who's the most influential on you? Who's kind of influenced you?
Do they all have to be punk rock?
No.
It would be a strange. It'll be a strange Mount Rushmore.
Bring it on.
I would probably put Morrissey, Joe Strummer, Elvis Presley, and Johnny Cash. How about that?
Yeah.
That's a weird Mount Rushmore.
It works. It works for me. All right, Trevor. I think we've taken up enough of your time, but one quick one.
Sure.
What would you say has been the biggest factor for Face to Face's longevity for 30 years? I mean, you've had ups and downs, but I think the fans have always been there, and we're always keen to hear more. So, you're doing something.
I mean, I can't take any credit for it. Really, it's the support of the fans. Really, that's the main factor of our longevity. The reason why we haven't gone away is our own stubbornness, our own tenacity. I mentioned our hiatus, we'll call it, earlier in the video, but we experienced that. It was more of a break because we realized after taking a certain amount of time off from the band is that we just loved it too much. It was something not only special that we shared with the audience that has supported us and followed us for all these years, but we just genuinely like to play music together, and that's the main factor.
Yeah.
So
it was
difficult to stay away from for too long, and it was like a magnet that just pulled us back together. I mean, we had a couple of lineup changes, but this was like beginning of 2000 or whatever when we came back from the hiatus. But I would say for the past 15 or so years, like this has been the tightest group of people in this band that's ever existed, and we love hanging out together. We like playing music together. We're funny because we don't really live by each other, so when we're on tour, everyone's as thick as thieves, and then when we go home, we all go home, and then it's just texts and calls. But that's how we go through life together, because we spend most of the year on tour together anyhow, you know. This year being a glaring exception. So yeah, without the support of the fans, it's nothing. And I would just say, you know, our tenacity is what's kind of kept us around. You can't give up. You got to keep trying. It's not really it's not a give up or trying proposition, because we're not really trying to achieve any particular goal. Maybe when we were young, it was like, I want to make it, whatever that means. Doesn't really mean anything. But it's more about just wanting to continue to do what we're doing because of the love for it. Yeah.
I mean, that's it. You really do have one of the, like, a proper die-hard fan base as well. You know, you've got a kind of, there's a core crew there, and you've got a very distinctive sound, and, you know, unmistakably face to face. So I think that's it, and it's consistent as well. I think that's probably going to be a big part of it. From, you know, from a fan's perspective, you know, you can put on a song and you know that's a face to face record. You know, in a good way. You just like, that's it. You know, and yeah, I'm intrigued to hear the new one as well. So that sounds good, and, you know, I
can't wait to get it out there. It's going to be really hard to sit on it for so many months. But
here's to another 30 years.
Well, hopefully we get through this pandemic thing sooner than later. I mean, I know the estimates are pessimistic, but I want to remain optimistic that we'll get some vaccines, and we'll all be able to get out of danger and be able to interact with one another in person again. You know,
that's it. Let's hope so. I think so. I think, like I said, optimistic with a healthy dose of realism. But I think, I think we'll be there. We'll be there.
Yeah,
we'll be in the pit once more.
All right, Trever Keith, thank you so much for your time. The new book is out now on your label, Antagonist Records. That website was iamtheantagonist.com.
Correct. Yes. Excellent.
Everyone, check it out. And 2021 new record. Let's, fingers crossed, we're going to get that, and can't wait to hear it.
Awesome. Thanks for chatting with me today. It's been cool talking to two guys in completely separate parts of the globe.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's been good fun. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on. Yeah,
all right, man. See ya.
Take care, man.
Everybody wants a truth, but everybody lies. Everybody lies. Well, everybody wants some proof.